Spoiler warning, 1043 was a big one. Hello everyone, it's Laffy Traffy. So you might have noticed that Luffy's devil fruit has been a hot topic lately. You might have seen the few hundred video theories that have come out in the past week, but I'm not here to talk about Luffy's devil fruit. I'll give my opinion on it, but most of all, we're going to be talking about what it means that Luffy is Joy Boy. Now, I have been theorizing and saying that Luffy's been Joy Boy for a while now, so that wasn't too much of a shock at the end of that chapter. What was a shock, though, was Luffy's devil fruit, and how it might not be the rubber fruit that we all thought we knew and loved. Before we get into it, make sure you subscribe if you enjoy this video or any of the previous videos that I've made, and like it because it helps out a lot, and make sure, for sure, comment below your theories as to Luffy being Joy Boy and Luffy's devil fruit. Now let's get into it. So first we're going to talk about Luffy's devil fruit. This isn't the point of the video, but I gotta cover all the bases because everyone's talking about it. So the main consensus here is that Luffy's rubber fruit is actually the resin fruit. Now, at first glance, that doesn't really mean much. Resin is kind of a more pure form of rubber, so why does it really matter what his devil fruit is? Well, for one, it makes a lot more sense. Resin has a lot more of the capabilities that Luffy showcases, like the heating and the meltiness of his possible awakening. But the issue here is, why doesn't Luffy know that he is resin? Because he goes on throughout the whole series, when he's first introduced, is he's a rubber man.
He's made of rubber!
How did that happen?
Yo ho ho, he took a bite of gum gum!
And aren't devil fruits supposed to tell you when you're a certain type of thing? I know it doesn't tell you how to use it. In the case of Law's devil fruit, he kind of had to figure out on his own how to use it. But at least name the fruit. If the world government were the ones who changed the gum fruit from the resin fruit, why doesn't Luffy know? These are things that I would like to explore more in the incoming chapters, but overall it just seems like a little bit of an inconsistency, I'll say it. I do enjoy the theory that it's resin, because it does make a lot more sense, and maybe he can be retconned similar to Katakuri to be a special paramecia, and maybe that's why it wasn't too clear, but overall I don't know why it couldn't just be rubber. So I'm gonna throw it out there that what if Luffy does still have the rubber fruit? Now, the rubber fruit doesn't mean that it can't have resin properties, because Oda said that Luffy has natural rubber, not artificial, manufactured rubber. So it's very possible that his base form is the natural rubber that we see him use and those same characteristics of it, while his awakening could be a more pure form of it. So his awakening could be more resin-like, as we see with his hair and that goopy state that he's in, but it could still be the rubber fruit, and just his awakening brings out resin properties because that's what rubber is. Why is the world government afraid of rubber? I mean, you might say, why is the world government afraid of resin? Good question. It really all goes back to the Eve tree, and that the gum fruit, based on Oda's original plot of the storyline, which I've always said definitely has some indication of what the future of One Piece and the end of One Piece will be. I think that the gum fruit is special from the world Eve tree, and that's why the world government, they're not afraid of the powers necessarily, but they're afraid of what it entails, and they're also afraid of the previous user of it. Now, I will throw in there that I do not subscribe to Luffy being a zone. If he's a zone, then hopefully maybe it's a mythical one and it can be explained away, but I don't think he's a zone. I think the God of Wisdom idol that Old Man Hio mentioned Luffy looking like earlier in Wano was really just an homage to that much more reason why he believes in Luffy and why all of Wano should believe in Luffy, because he's literally a deity. Anyway, that's it for Luffy's devil fruit. Now I want to go into the real reason that I'm making this video, because I didn't want to just shout into the void about Luffy's devil fruit just like everyone else is, because trust me, all the other YouTubers go much more in depth. I highly recommend you check them out. They're great. But this one, I had an inkling to how Joy Boy and Luffy being the same person can make sense, with Luffy still retaining all of his freedom and his actions meaning something. and that is that Luffy is the Avatar. Now hear me out. Now that Luffy is officially confirmed to be Joy Boy, I think that there is a lot that we have to look into when we look at the history of Luffy, because a big concern with Luffy being Joy Boy is free will and destiny, because freedom is a very, very integral part of Luffy's character, and so to say that now he's reincarnating as Joy Boy from the past, and Joy Boy's gonna take over and fight as Luffy, and then Luffy's just gonna be unconscious or dead throughout the whole thing, that just really doesn't sound like Luffy to me, and I feel like a lot of people would really be upset by that option. So, this all reminded me of a wonderful little show called Avatar: The Last Airbender. If you haven't seen it, I suggest you go see it, but I just recently rewatched it, and so it was fresh in my mind when now I see the possibility that Luffy is going into this super state that reminds Zunisha of Joy Boy, and it seems very familiar to how Aang goes into the Avatar state and gains all of the powers of the previous avatars. And maybe that's just what awakenings have been this entire time, and that every previous user builds upon the knowledge and the powers of the devil fruits so that eventually, once experienced users can use it in the future, they will already have those capabilities broken out, so to speak. And considering the rarity of just how often an extremely powerful user comes along in the world, it's pretty easy to say that the vast majority of devil fruits probably don't even meet their awakenings, and if they do, that doesn't mean that a very powerful user had used them in the first place, like Doflamingo and Katakuri. They might have been the most powerful users to date to use that devil fruit, whereas we see Luffy very may well be the next user of the Gum Gum fruit right after Joy Boy. And a notable figure like that, the presence and the voice of the previous user can still be in the fruit, and that may be how this avatar state is going to come through for Luffy. So many people might tap into awakenings and have no inkling of what exactly they're tapping into, but for very notable and powerful people like Joy Boy, it's much more noticeable to others that the fruit is still carrying on the soul, the will, and the voice of the previous user. Very similar to how Odin's voice and soul and will is in his sword that now Zoro is wielding. So much so that Zoro, Kaido, people can feel Odin's presence within the sword, and his power is being used through it. This may be exactly what's happening with Devil Fruit Awakenings. And this also ties into something crazy, Blackbeard. If Roxty Zebek was the previous user of the Dark Fruit, that may be exactly why Blackbeard was so obsessed with getting that fruit, and that Zebek's soul and his voice is now within Blackbeard, and it's exactly why Zoro and Luffy, when they came across him in Jaya, sensed multiple people. It's kind of crazy if you think about it like that, you know. So now let's bring it back to Luffy and what that means for him. If Joy Boy was the previous user, and a very powerful user at that, it's very possible that Joy Boy's presence, his aura, his persona, his voice, is still within the fruit. And now that Luffy has eaten it, his voice is kind of within him as well. And this could be why Shanks, Rayleigh, many others like in Marineford and Impel Down, why so many people are gravitating towards Luffy is because not only does Luffy have the charisma to be a leader and be free and just, you know, amp up people to fight for him, but he's also carrying the will of someone who literally tried to unite the entire world with, like, the drums of liberation and everything. Joy Boy's entire MO was uniting people. So even if they might not know what exactly it is that they're sensing, they may be able to recognize that extra voice and that magnetism towards Luffy because of Joy Boy. To clarify, I don't think it's a very overwhelming voice. As with any tinfoil hat theory, there are some, eyebrow raises, and for one, Blackbeard was immediately noticed to have multiple voices within him, whereas it has never been outright stated that Luffy has multiple voices in him, and if Zoro has been hanging around Luffy the entire time, like maybe you would have noticed that. But to counter that with my theory, Joy Boy might not be the type of person to try and control someone. They might just let Luffy be Luffy, and that will go into why Luffy does still have free will, whereas Zebek, a very calculating, powerful person, may be much more willing to persuade their next user to do their bidding and continue their will, similar to Blackbeard, and Blackbeard is all more willing to do it. Now, with Devil Fruits being kind of the culmination of all of its users, that's how I equate it to being similar to the Avatar state. Because in the Avatar state, Aang has all of the previous users' experience and power while in the Avatar state. That could be a very similar thing to what awakenings are. And one of the biggest reasons why I loved Aang as the Avatar, and why it didn't feel like, even though Aang was destined, he was literally born as the Avatar, destined to save the world, it never felt like Aang's choices didn't matter, and it never felt like Aang lost himself, because there's a very notable moment where Aang would seek out the guidance of previous avatars when he was trying to decide whether or not to kill the Fire Lord, and the other avatars would give their knowledge and experiences and try to convince Aang why sometimes that is the answer. Aang remained true to his character of trying to not choose violence. Death, specifically. There was violence. It just made it all the more powerful that Aang retained his individuality and personality when he became the Avatar, and he still saved the world as Aang. He didn't let the previous users of the Avatar overwhelm him or influence him in any way. That might be what's happening to Luffy. He can kind of tap into all his powers, but overall, Luffy will not be overtaken by Joy Boy. I hope, Oda can always surprise us, but I hope that there's no moment where Joy Boy takes over Luffy's body. If it does happen, I hope it's for a very small amount of time until Luffy takes it back, or I don't know if I would even like that, but I hope it's always Luffy. It's always going to be Luffy, and his decisions matter, his charisma and the connections that he's made to people along the way, important people, Rayleigh, Crocus, Shanks, all of these people have been integral into getting Luffy to where he is, but they wouldn't be following Luffy if he wasn't Luffy, if he didn't embody freedom and free will and uniting people as he goes. So I just want to be clear that Luffy will always be Luffy. Hopefully. And to clarify, the whole Avatar thing doesn't mean that Luffy can, invoke Joy Boy's advice or literally speak to him like Aang can. It's more just in the Avatar state. While Luffy's awakened, he can use the powers and build upon the powers of all the previous users, aka Joy Boy. And then to tie this all together, coming all the way back around to the Drums of Liberation and Zunisha, like I said, Joy Boy most definitely probably had the gum fruit, resin fruit, whatever you want to call it. Joy Boy was the last awakened user of it, so that persona and that voice, bring it all back to the voice, because Joy Boy used his fruit to try to liberate the entire world. And now that Luffy, the first one in 800 years who has managed to get to the awakened state of the gum fruit, now Zunisha recognizes that voice and that presence to be Joy Boy. There needs to be an elaboration on Zunisha and Joy Boy's connection for sure, and I'm looking forward to that. But as any theory, let me know what your version of it is. Let me know what your thoughts are on it, and if you liked it, make sure you like the video and subscribe because it does help out a lot, and we will talk next time. Stay tuned for my reaction to 1044, and Kitten will be here too, I'm sure, to wreak havoc as always. If you want more discussions on Joy Boy, feel free to check out this video wherever it is. I talk about how Luffy is probably Joy Boy and some of the other candidates that there are, so check it out. But until then, have a great day, follow your dreams, and check me next time. Bye!